Good morning and welcome to day 3 of the Museums Association's annual conference. So very excitingly, I'm delighted to introduce David Anderson, the Director General of National Museum Wales, Nia Williams, the Director of Learning at National Museum Wales, and Dan Jones, who's going to sort out the video for us this morning for the tour. I'm facilitating today's session. I'm Eleanor Mills from the Museums Association, and today's tour is going to be of St Fagans National Museum of History near Cardiff, which won the Art Fund Museum of the Year 2019. Before I hand over to David and Nia, I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. Firstly, as attendees, your cameras and microphones should be automatically disabled, but you can use the chat function on your menu bar to introduce yourselves, talk to others, share links and experiences. You can also tweet using the hashtag Museums2020. There's going to be captioning on the tour, and at the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you would like audio interpretation, press the interpretation button and switch to the French channel for live description. If you have a question that you'd like the panel to address, then please share this via the Q&A. You should be able to see this in the menu bar. You can ask a question and please share your name and organisation if relevant. After the 15-minute tour has ended, I will put selected questions to David and Nia. You can leave and rejoin the webinar at any time, and we are recording this session and it will be available on our website in due course. Finally, please bear with us if there are any technical problems during the webinar, and feel free to send me a private chat message if you have any trouble. Right now, I'll hand you over to Nia for a short Welsh welcome. Thanks.
Bore da I chi gyd, a croeso cynnes iawn I chi I Gymru ag I St Fagans. A diolch yn fawr I chi am ymuno gyda ni bore yma ar ôl, fi siŵr bod ni fan chi di aros lan I weld yr etholiadau neithiwr. A nawr drosodd at David.
Welcome to St Fagans, and thank you for joining us. And I'd now like to invite my colleague Dan to start to play the video.
Thank you very much.
Croeso I St Fagan, Amgueddfa Cymru. Welcome to St Fagans National Museum of History.
Sefydlwyd St Fagans nôl yn 1948. A'r syniad oedd I greu casgliad o adeiladau oedd yn gweud straeon am hanes Cymru. A'r hyn mae'r tîm wedi wneud ers 1948 yw mynd ati I dynnu adeiladau lawr ac I ail-greu nhw, I ail-adeiladu nhw garreg wrth garreg yma yn St Fagans.
St Fagans is an exemplar of cultural democracy, and this goes right back to the origins of the museum in 1948, which was founded on two really important principles. The first one is the life of every person matters, and the second one is that at the end, it's people, not institutions, who are carriers of culture. So that whole idea of living culture, and that living culture being part of the organisation, is in the DNA of St Fagans.
We have 40 re-erected buildings that tell different stories, different social stories over the centuries. And as part of the redevelopment, we've taken that story further back in time. So behind us here, you can see Llys Llywelyn, which takes us back to the medieval period. Based on archaeological evidence, we've recreated a medieval Prince's Hall. We've done it with a twist. We've created it as a sleepover facility for school children. At the side here, you can see the new Amgueddfa Gallery. We've also created new galleries for people to explore history. We very much feel that history is something that we do together, and the redevelopment focused on creating history with people rather than for them.
So in a sense, the process of developing St Fagans was the same as the experience now that visitors get when they come. They're still part of the story, and they're still part of the process. So we didn't close, we stayed open, and that staying open was a conscious decision in order to enable us to be the kind of museum that we want to be.
Well, during the lockdown, we had to refocus our work, and as the National History Museum of Wales, it was really important that we captured the now for future generations. So one important project that we've undertaken is collecting COVID, collecting people's lived experiences of what is happening now in Wales.
We were very aware as a National Museum that we had a duty to document this crisis for the nation and for future generations. But also we were acutely aware that people were in crisis, and this was a very emotional and troubling time for people. And what we've done is launch an online questionnaire asking people to reflect, to meditate on their experiences of the pandemic. And so far we've received over 1,000 responses, far exceeding all our expectations. People have been very open and transparent about their emotions, their worries, their anxieties.
Croeso I
Captured the now for future generations. So one important project that we've undertaken is collecting COVID, collecting people's lived experiences of what is happening now in Wales.
We were very aware as a National Museum that we had a duty to document this crisis for the nation and for future generations. But also we were acutely aware that people were in crisis, and this was a very emotional and troubling time for people. And what we've done is launch an online questionnaire asking people to reflect, to meditate on their experiences of the pandemic. And so far we've received over 1,000 responses, far exceeding all our expectations. People have been very open and transparent about their emotions, their worries, their anxieties. There are really quite inspirational stories there of community spirit. So it's going to be a really valuable resource for future historians and for future generations here in Wales. It's a real snapshot of a moment in time in our collective history. Now, in that questionnaire, as well as asking people to reflect on their daily lives and emotions, we also ask them to identify objects that may in the future represent the pandemic to them. And now, with COVID restrictions still in force, we are starting to receive those objects into the collection. The things that we're receiving reflect people's creativity during lockdown. So examples of knitted and crocheted rainbows, those painted pebbles that people left in public spaces across Wales and beyond. And we've received one large object, a patchwork quilt made by an online sewing group that was established on Facebook by a group in Cwmbran. So they clubbed together, they made scrub bags and masks for NHS workers. And then to commemorate that collective achievement, they've made a quilt, and each member has made a square, and they've now given it to the museum.
St Fagans is different, I believe, from very many other museums because of its commitment to history from the bottom up. The idea that it's the lives of everybody that makes up the totality of our understanding of our past and our present. The challenges and questions which are raised are ones which come from outside the organisation to a large degree, rather than being decided just by the professionals inside.
Although St Fagans is a museum of history, it's imperative that it remains relevant for contemporary Wales. We have been working with the Black Lives Matter movement to capture the protests during lockdown.
My name's Nia Adam. I'm the Black History creator at the National Museum of Wales, based in St Fagans. We understood that we needed to collect and record lived experiences of everyone who live in Wales. So this was really important to us, that we really need to represent and make sure that collection really mirrored our communities. We were involved with the BLM from the start. It was actually myself that was going to the meetings that was coordinated by the BLM Cardiff and the Vale, and also Newport. They instigated a demonstration in line with Shukri to protest in regards to the injustice that was happening across the globe. And it was a movement that we've seen that have grown both internationally but locally as well. And it was really wonderful to see so many young people that came out to represent. And we were there really solely just to support them, to show our solidarity with the movement, but also not only there to support them, but to actually collect their experience from that day. Because we understand that every placard has a story behind it. This is one of the most important, that we not only display the placards, but actually record the experience of that person who have done that placard, and record their experiences and their own lived experiences, and as to the reason why they were there at that moment. But with their voices, the pictures, and the placard and object, it gives you a holistic overview. It's such a powerful tool for communities to use that in a space like the museum, where we're living through history. And I think we need to do justice for that, where we capture every story from Wales. I think museums are changing, we're changing with times, and we're becoming more embedded within communities. And I hope that lives for such a long time, because I think communities are part of the museum. So it's really breaking down these barriers. Museums were more internal thinking, not external. So I think we're becoming more aware of why it is important to not only engage and communicate with communities, but to actually be embedded in our communities. So when a person walks in, a young person from the Black communities or people of colour, they actually see themselves reflected in the museum, and they feel that they belong there, and they see a mirror image of themselves.
Ni yw darparwr mwyaf addysg tu allan i'r stafell ddosbarth yng Nghymru, ac felly oedd yn bwysig iawn bod ni'n parhau i gydweithio ac i gefnogi ysgolion yn ystod y cyfnod anodd hwn.
Yn ystod y cyfnod cloi, nath holl ysgolion cloi a cau, felly oedd angen i ni ffindio ffyrdd newydd o ymgysylltu gyda'r disgyblion yma. Wnaethon ni hyn trwy creu nifer o raglenni ac adnoddau digidol ar-lein. Wnaethon ni creu Minecraft Your Museum, sydd cyfle i blant creu amgueddfa eu hun dros y platfform Minecraft. Ni gyd yn gwybod bod plant yn mwynhau chwarae Minecraft, felly dyma oedd cyfle i nhw creu amgueddfa a roi mewn i cystadleuaeth i ennill gwobrau. Gyda'r amgueddfa Rufeinig yn Carleon, wnaethon nhw creu lleng filer o bell, felly cyfle i disgyblion cymryd rhan mewn nifer o sialensiau gwahanol i ddod yn milwr Rufeinig o'i cartrefi ei hun. Gan bod ysgolion nawr wedi ailagor, ond dal methu ymweld gyda'n amgueddfeydd, dyn ni wedi creu rhaglen o gweithdai rhithiol, felly bod staff o'r amgueddfa dal yn gallu siarad a trafod gyda disgyblion ysgol dros Microsoft Teams. Un o'r sesiynau dyn ni wedi creu yw gweithdi rhithiol Bryn Eryr, y Celtiaid. Dyn ni wedi creu ffilm i roi cyfle i'r plant gweld Bryn Eryr ein tai crwn oes haearn heb gorfod dod i'r amgueddfa. Wedyn, yn ystod y gweithdi, mae cyfle i'r plant gofyn cwestiynau a gweld nifer o gwrthrychau dyn ni gallu dangos dros y sgrin iddynt. Ni wedi cael adborth ffantastig gan yr ysgolion. Maen nhw gyd yn mwynhau cyfle i weld beth sydd gyda ni yn yr amgueddfa heb gorfod dod yma. A dwi'n credu dyma ffordd newydd o weithio gall parhau mewn i'r dyfodol.
We have adopted a new and I think rather different model for museums, which is one that's founded on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and in particular on the right to participate in the cultural life of the community.
One of the things that we've done during lockdown is launch the Amgueddfa Cymru producers. Young people between the ages of 16 and 24 have got involved with a range of different areas of work for the museum, from creating some of the exhibitions that we hope can open over Christmas here at St Fagans, to taking over our Twitter accounts and to hosting debates and discussions. It's really important that museums are relevant to young people and that young people have a voice in creating the heritage that is part of the museum.
My name is Umulkhai Mohammed and I am one of the Amgueddfa Cymru producers. So some of the projects that I've been involved with at St Fagans include the Somali Heritage Day as well as the Future Has a Past exhibition. The Future Has a Past is an exhibition and it's going to be put on display at St Fagans. The museum is really keen for the development of this exhibition to be one that's kind of led in a co-creating methodology, I guess. Myself and Jake, another ACP producer, helped select the lead artists. We selected Henry Ellis, who is a Dutch artist and whose practice is very site-specific, and he has a background in theatre making as well, who will be leading on the project in collaboration with the young creators, all coming together to address or look at the central theme of the future of Wales. Somali Heritage Day back in 2019 was a one-day kind of a celebratory event speaking about and to the Somali heritage and Somali community of Wales, which is one of the oldest Black communities in the whole of the UK, and just speaking about both the heritage in terms of in Wales, but also the Somali heritage in general, and highlighting that in a number of different ways. Somali seamen were one of the earliest Somali settlers in Wales back in kind of the 30s and 40s, and there have been projects in the past across Wales like documenting the seamen's history but not so much their wives and their children. So I've interviewed 3 seamen's wives and filmed a video of that, which was shared as a part of the event with the community. The museum does so much in terms of kinds of projects, kinds of histories that it shows, and that appeals to a lot of people. Getting kind of young creators involved in a really practical, active way, I think adds another layer of quality to those projects in terms of just making sure that those projects are speaking to young people and their experiences, and making sure that what the museum is doing is relevant basically to the next generation of young people across Wales.
I'm most proud about St Fagans because so many people who come to visit it from Wales, and actually from elsewhere as well, are proud of it themselves. And in some ways, the real test of a museum is how visitors feel about it. And I've never known a museum that is more loved than St Fagans. That was actually true even before the redevelopment, but it's so much more true now. And I think it's also much more true that people who never used to visit St Fagans now do so and feel that sense of pride and that sense of belonging. So we've expanded what St Fagans means far beyond where it was 10 years ago.
Mae St Fagans felly yn rhoi profiad emosiynol iawn i bobl. Maen nhw'n cerdded mewn i hanes, mae'n brofiad kinesthetic iawn, a mae'n adlewyrchu hanesion pobl Cymru ar hyd y canrifoedd. A'r hyn i ni wedi trio wneud wrth ail-ddatblygu St Fagans yw ymestyn y diffiniad yna o hanesion Cymru a cynnwys pawb sydd wedi gwneud Cymru yn gartref i nhw, fel bod eu hanesion nhw yn gallu cael ei adlewyrchu yma yn St Fagans.
My personal feeling about St Fagans all the way through the project is a sense of those generations of people in Wales, very often from the poorest communities, the most marginal people, whose story has never been properly told. And I imagine them all the way around this museum, outside its doors and its walls, waiting for the opportunity to come in and tell their stories. And I do believe by this development, we have created a foundation for those stories to be told in the generations to come in a way that simply wasn't possible before.
Thank you so much, Dan, David and Nia, for sharing that marvellous video about St Fagans. So firstly, David, I'd really like to know how the journey has been over the last year since winning Museum of the Year, and then during this really difficult time during the pandemic. Obviously, we've had the protests of Black Lives Matter, and how St Fagans has developed over the last year.
Well, I think that the first thing that was really quite amazing was the reaction within Wales itself. I mean, there really was a kind of national celebration. It wasn't just a museum that had won, it was Wales, in a sense, had collectively won as well. And that had been recognised. And I think that it was also, for us, a wonderful validation of our commitment to cultural rights and cultural democracy, which we put right at the centre of our work. And it was wonderful that Stephen Duker, then the director of the Arts Prize, said, St Fagans lives, breathes and embodies the culture and identity of Wales. A monument to modern museum democracy, this magical place was made by the people of Wales for people everywhere. And that sort of universalist message really was wonderful that had been seen by the judges really too. And it's provided a platform for us really now to move forward. We saw a huge rise in visitor numbers, for example, immediately after the announcement, and in the months afterwards. And also great for us in terms of recognition for the funders who backed us, and all those supporters for the project as well. We've obviously gone into COVID since then, and that's been extraordinary to be both the winner of the Museum of the Year award and for periods of time unable to open our museum. But we have managed to reopen, at least for a while. We had to close again now, but we hope to reopen again very shortly. And we've been really creative in the work that we've done. And I know Nia will probably say a little bit about this as well. But I wanted to highlight just one project, which is the Collecting COVID project, which we saw in the video there. What we didn't have an opportunity to say was this is the second time the museum, St Fagans, if you like, has done a mass observation project, surveying cultural life across Wales, really. The first one was in 1937, unbelievably, and it's either the very first in the UK or the equal first mass observation project in that year. And we've still got the responses which were made from 1937 onwards in the St Fagans collection, and we'll have an opportunity to compare, therefore, people's lives now with people's lives over 80 years ago, which is just extraordinary.
Nia, would you like to respond at all, or shall I ask? So we've had a question from Catherine McAlpine saying, obviously Welsh audiences are a core audience for you. How much do you consider your mission to reflect what Wales is to non-Welsh audiences, and has this changed since COVID? Nia, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, sure. Diolch, Eleanor. Well, we want St Fagans to be a home for everybody who's made Wales their home. And as you saw really in the video, I think one of the most important decisions we made was not to close and to turn the whole construction process into an imaginative public programme with partners and volunteers. And this collaborative way of working is now central really to the way we work with over 120 different partners across Wales. And I think one of the big changes for us really has been to see engagement as everybody's work. This isn't about a project or a programme, it's a methodology for the museum to work. And I think we're thinking more now about perhaps how we measure the impact of this work, and developing community engagement perhaps as our business proposition. A business model that's based on values. And we welcome the engagement of anybody. If people, when we are able to reopen, come and visit, there's a place for everybody to participate with the museum and get involved and respond to some of the displays that are being displayed in the museum itself. So any visitor can provide an input and can become part of the story.
Thank you, Nia. And I'm going to move on to Caitlin Grieg's question after another one from Catherine, just because Caitlin's question just will tail off the session nicely. But Catherine asks, David mentioned the different model of St Fagans in yesterday's session. Can you say a bit more about how the organisation is structured to allow participation to be at the heart?
Yes, I mean, I think for any organisation, this is a journey, and we have got, of course, as a Welsh government-funded body, a board of trustees, and we're accountable, therefore, democratically to the Board of Trustees through to the Welsh Government and to the people of Wales. But I think we're very keen to develop also the models of accountability that lie outside those traditional models as well. And I think you saw the Amgueddfa Cymru producers talking there about the role that they play in putting together an exhibition, choosing the artists there to work with, choosing the content of the exhibition, deciding how it is to be displayed. So it's an example of a new kind of project for us, really, where we try to hand over a great deal of the responsibility and the accountability and the agency to a group of young people who are working with the museum. And it's just one of a number of projects like this that we're developing. Like any museum, we haven't reached our destination yet. We have our vision, we have our ambition, and we're developing our work, but we are on a journey, and we know we've still got a lot to do.
And Mary Ford asks, where did the impetus for this different way of seeing and being come from? Nia, would you like to take that one?
I think it came from the work with the communities, the collaborative work that we've done, really. What you've seen Nazir and Ellen and show in the film there. This is very much about an equitable partnership with the communities across Wales. And, we're a welcoming museum for everybody, but obviously we are the National Museum of Wales. And so we are putting perhaps Wales as a story first. I think perhaps we're focusing quite a lot on equity at the moment. We have choices and we're making choices in terms of who we work with. And I guess we're framing some of these choices around working with people who are facing the greatest challenges and furthest away from power at the moment. That's the principle that we're working on. And also the slogan, in a way, nothing about us without us, has become a way of working for us with our community partners and with involving participants across Wales.
Thank you, Nia. And then I'd like to end on this one from Caitlin. St Fagans is obviously still growing and evolving, and this is such a huge time of change. Do you know what comes next? This is the big question.
I think today, looking at the world it is, with the United States as it is, and actually, to be honest, the United Kingdom as it is as well, with growing sense of imbalance and tension, really, in the way in which the COVID pandemic is being addressed by the different governments, the 4 nations of the United Kingdom, I think it would be very unwise to feel that we can see very far into the future. I think probably, like almost everybody who's working in a museum anywhere in the 4 nations, there's great uncertainty for us, really. I think that the absolutely key thing for us, though, is that we hold true to our values and hold true to the principles upon which we've developed St Fagans. And whatever our funding position is, we will try to keep moving forward with the work and actually really welcoming dialogue and partnership with other people in museums who are on the same journey, whether it's in Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, Republic of Ireland, Argentina, wherever.
Nia, would you like to add anything?
Well, just to add, really, I think we've got some amazing staff, partners, volunteers, the Amgueddfa Cymru producers, and I have faith that they will continue to drive this work forward with us.
Fantastic. Well, unless you'd like to add anything now, I think we will end this morning's tour. And I would like to say thank you so much to David and Nia for joining us and walking us through St Fagans and the marvellous work that you do. And Dan, thank you very much for the video. It's fantastic. So next up is going to be Tamsin doing her introduction for first-time delegates. And then Jean Cameron introduces day 3 at 9:30. Thank you so much, everybody. See you later. Namaste. Bye-bye for now.
Rydw.